Hello there, everyone. Patricia here. Super excited. Today we're gonna go a little bit traditional on one of my things because it's a Wednesday, and networking Wednesday is something I've always been doing for years, and there's just some content that is just too good to pass up today. And so we're going to talk about like Don Lemon's network and how it shows us what real community looks like and how it works together in a professional setting because it was just so powerful, so powerful. And for me, it was like the perfect case study for so much of the work that I've done. And we'll talk about that because literally I have like four different master classes, workshops, whatever, that all seem to converge in this one story. So, the quick catch up is last week, as a result of some protesting that was going on in Minnesota a few weeks ago, Don Lemon, the former CNN news anchor, who's been an independent journalist now for the last, I think, 3 years. I think it's been 3 years since he left CNN. And he was arrested by the federal government on Thursday night, announcing into Friday morning uh, because of this protest that he covered. So he wasn't a protester, he was a journalist attending a protest and covering the story. All right, fast forward. So it is Friday morning. I am just like flipping through, catching up on some of my content folks. I forgot what else I was working on. And I flipped and I saw, oh, I know what it was. I saw this story on Instagram. And I was like, what? And I saw that there was a live going from his from his Instagram profile. And I'm like, well, is he still in jail or is he out or like what happened? So I go on there and is in fact not still in jail. I mean, excuse me, he is not out. He is in fact still in jail. And there are people covering his channel for him. And so I'm looking at this and then I'm like, I wonder if it's on YouTube as well. So I go to his YouTube channel, and sure enough, there it is. And by the time I found them, they had already been going for an hour, um, East Coast time, which meant I think it was like if it was 10 o'clock East Coast time, it was 9 o'clock here, and I didn't catch them till 10 o'clock Central. So in any case, they had already been going strong for an hour. And I proceeded to keep it on for the rest of the day in the background, checking in, watching, listening to some of the conversations, and keeping up with all of the things. And that channel was covered for the entire 8 or 9 hours until he was released um, in the Pacific time zone because that's where he was. And he was released. They kept it on for a second, took a break, and then he came on later on that night himself from where he was in LA. Okay, let's back up. Because if this is not a classic case study in leveraging your network and having people come together for you, I don't know what is. Because literally, what it looks like, and turned out to be that his professional network kept his profile and his page going, which is his livelihood, right? He's a journalist, an independent journalist now. So no huge corporate people to fill in or whatever. It's him. Well, his people kept his his show and his channel going for 8 or 9 hours that day on Friday, the entire day. Never missed a beat. Never missed a beat. And Here's the thing that makes it so fantastic. So I'm glad I didn't like go and record this right away, because the learning about the backstory or some things after the fact really helps fill it in. Here is the magic of all of this. He did not know this was going on. He had no idea that all of this was happening on his behalf. I think he stated that, and he stated when he was interviewing and having a conversation with someone in the days afterwards, that he did ask someone. He was like, "Oh my goodness, like my show, what is my show that we're doing?" And they're like, "What are you talking about? You don't even need to be worried about that. Like this group of folks, your show has been going since 10 a.m. Eastern nonstop." And he's like, "What?" So here's how it all fits in. Number one, so what was happening was there were three or four key people who filled in as the anchor, right? So that's how they were able to keep it going for that 8 or 9 hours nonstop. There was a familiar face that stayed on for several hours at a time. And I think one of the women, she actually came back towards the end, and someone else co-anchored with her. But anyway, but that's how it is. So you had those key people who were the kept things consistent, right? And then during the course of it, dozens of people filled in and came in as panels, as one-on-ones, whatever, for the rest of the time, never missing a beat. And in the background, because I'm a nerd when it comes to the backstory and all the things that are going on in the background. His team was fantastic. Like they did not miss a beat. I can't wait to learn more about what his team was doing in the background to make all of this come to pass. A few of the things that I learned that I from paying attention and watching was that the moment that people found out about it overnight and early morning, people started calling his team and calling each other to be like, what do we need to do? Right. And that's how I'm presuming some of this, like, we're going to keep his show going. And someone stepped up, but I haven't heard that part of the story yet. And when I do, I will definitely come back. There will be a part two to this, because I really feel like there is a part two to it that we'll have to come back to. So, in any case, these folks are like calling each other, calling his team, to be like, what do we need to do? And someone makes the decision, we're going to keep the show going. And they step up, and there they go. I don't, if you've never put something together in the midst of a crisis, like you don't understand how much that involves. And I was commenting on another colleague's page who referenced this from a marketing standpoint, which is fascinating as well. And, she was like, yeah, when there's crisis, like, they're journalists, like, this is how they respond. And yes, I get that. But if you're not in that world, or if you're not part of an executive level team, like I've been in the past, whose job it is to respond to crisis level things, you have no idea the levels of detail and the things that are going on in order to push something forward. I will share that story separately, not here, as a real life story that I know that I had to go through at one point in time when there was a couple of crises, because one happened at one agency, and because of my experience in that one, I knew how to respond when another crisis arose at a different agency a few years later. So there's just so much that goes on in the background in order to make it look, quote, easy on the front, or like, oh, this was planned, even when it wasn't. And it's clear that it wasn't for whatever reason. And in this case, because, Dawn was, in a holding cell. in Los Angeles. So he was not running his own show. Okay, so that's the background of it. And here are the things. First of all, let's talk about the relationships you have to have in place over time in order for people to have that as a natural inclination. This is one of those things that this is the core of what I have taught, the frameworks I've put together, all of that when it comes to building your professional relationships and building relationships that last, right? I always add that in there and I will keep it because this is so um, uh, just aligned with it. Not just building professional relationships, but building professional relationships that last so that in a time of crisis or in a time of need, whatever, it doesn't have to be a crisis, but in a time of need, people are willing to step up and respond to the need, right? And that happens because those relationships, those bonds are so strong. And that's one of those things I always have a conversation with people like, how strong are your relationships really? And if you want to find out, let something happen and you try to tap into them and see what happens. And the magic of this moment was Don didn't even tap into them. They tapped into him and made stuff happen. Right? It's just so fascinating. It is so fascinating. I feel like I'm not going to do this conversation justice, but I'm going to I'm going to keep trying. So that's one of the things, right? The building of those authentic professional relationships over time, such that in a time of need, you can tap into them or they step up to you and say, what can we do? And that leads to a second piece of work that I've done over the years, which is um, managing or maintaining your network in a crisis, right? This was created, I created this in 2020 when the pandemic was happening. And I was like, you know, there was no public speaking. There, I that's what I do. I do presentations, I do trainings, I go out, and there was none of that. Everyone was on lockdown. And I was like, what can I do in this moment to meet a need, utilizing skills that I have? And that's when I created a virtual masterclass that I just put out there um, for free for folks to know, hey, in this moment, your people still need you. And that is so true right here. And in talking about how can you meet that need and how can you lean in by recognizing the humanity of the moment and leaning into that, and then literally bringing their professional skills into the mix. Beautiful. Beautiful, right? Just beautiful. Um so there was that piece of it. So you're talking about having these fantastic folks who are leaning in a moment of crisis and a moment of need, and not trying to say, oh, what can I get out of this moment, but like, what can I give? Ah, I love it. That is one of the things that I always emphasize is making sure that you focus on what you can give in a situation, not just what you can take or receive. Because the relational part of this is what makes this work, not some transaction, right? Well, I'll do this if. I don't know if there was someone who did that in that case, but it certainly, they didn't make it onto this screen because these folks were here because of the relationships. Okay. So let's talk about the diversity of the group. Oh, It was beautiful, beautiful, which leans into, I'm like, there are all these things. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to bring this back and this back and this back. But that leans into this conversation that I had created about diversifying your relationships. And when I say that, of course, particularly in today's climate, people will just go straight to, oh, you're giving preference to people based on race and all that kind of stuff. No, that is not what I'm talking about. Even though, hello, I am an African American woman, lawyer, like all of those things. Okay. So, that said, when I'm talking about the diversity of things, I'm talking about diversity of backgrounds and industries and how things change over time, right? And making sure that you're tapping into people and things that don't look or sound like you, because that keeps things fresh, right? So, what did this look like in the Don Lemon case? Here we go. It was beautiful. There were men and women who were tapped in. There were men and women of differing races, ethnicities, all of the things, nationalities, black, white, Asian, all of, like, all the things. Then there was this differing political views, right? Liberals, moderates, conservatives. I mean, like, there was a gentleman who had faced a similar situation last year, with politics and all. And he started an organization specifically to help independent journalists in times like these, because of the common denominator of the First Amendment, and their rights are protected by that as journalists, regardless of your political or economic views. Right? He was on the show twice during the day. He came back, right, to talk about it. He was on a plane, y'all. At one of those points, it was just, I just get chills thinking about it. He was on a plane weighing in to support and show support for Don Lemon in this moment. Like, they literally had to break from him because his plane landed and he was getting fuzzy. And so they're like, okay, we'll catch back up with you again later. Okay? That's commitment. Because you could just call it in on, like, I'm. No, no, no. Showing up in places and spaces that are not convenient to you, to him, and making sure to weigh in. Okay? Um, the diversity of uh, industries. There were folks from a host of professional backgrounds: lawyers, journalists, activists. There was even a doctor who had been on Don's show before, talking about mental health and all of those types of things as it relates to the politics of the day. She came on. I mean, this is what I'm talking about, having a strong and diverse professional network. It looks like this. It looks like this. And how it applies in your case, right? What does it mean for you? I know that for me, one of the things that I've always done is, because I'm just curious, maybe some people might call it nosy sometimes, but I would go and attend or join organizations that didn't look like they made sense on the surface, right? It wasn't a lawyers group, it wasn't a legislative group. You know, I joined women's, leadership groups, uh, some business things, but even before I was fully involved in the chamber with my own business, being involved because of the education policy piece of it. Like, I understood that these things can meld together in ways that you don't have any idea in the future. You're not always doing stuff because of what you're going to gain from it today, right here in this moment. That is such a small and limited purview. It is small. It is limited. You want to build your relationships and your network so that they're expansive. There is no way in the world that Don Lemon knew as he built these relationships over 10, 15, 20 years that it could culminate in a moment like this. You don't plan for it. What is it? Someone say like it's not like putting. I saw someone wrote on there on a post. It's not like you plan and put being indicted by the federal government on your vision board. Oh my god, that tickled me. That's not something you plan or put on your vision board. However, making these connections and keeping them and nurturing them can lead to things you don't necessarily expect. Because even for him, think about it 3 years ago when he was starting out as an independent, deciding not to go pursue another corporate gig, but to start his own thing. Like that requires dipping into your professional network for that support, to get people to come on, to get people to talk about it and to share the word and the news, right? I know this for myself, having gone out on my own back in 2010, and I had no plans of it. I was scared I'm like, this is not what I want to do right now. I had two small kids. I was just left an executive level job because of politics and trying to figure out what to do next. And it was not go start your own gig. Oh my God. That was not on my bingo card at the time. Absolutely not. However, leaning into that and acknowledging that there are people around me that I could tap into to help figure out what to do next, which is the fourth piece, that personal mastermind piece. Oh my gosh. Your personal board of advisors, whatever you want to call it. That's how I tapped in when I was trying to figure out what to do next. And I'll be doggone if it didn't turn out. I watched a follow up piece again this week where Don Lemon actually interviewed one of his personal board of advisors folks who he had had conversations with several weeks ago about, hey, if some of this stuff turns bad at some point, like, what do you think? What are your thoughts? Again, not knowing that this was actually going to happen, but the fact that he had actually had a conversation with one of his personal advisors about what would happen or what do you do if. Oh, I told y'all, this was like a perfect case study for me. I'm so excited about not the circumstances that caused it, but to bring to bear the value and the importance of it. It doesn't matter where you are. You don't have to be Don Lemon. You don't have to be a national personality, whatever. You in your own world and circle community here today can gain incredible value from acknowledging the need to maintain your relationships, to build them out, to be connected, to acknowledge folks in their time of need, and reach out just because, not because you need or want something, to make sure that you diversify your relationships, to keep your mind open and talking to other folks, not abandoning your core values, because that's a whole other conversation. We're not talking about that, because that tips on the transactional part, right? What can I get out of it? We're not going there. That's not what I teach. That's not a part of my values. But keeping things open to explore, to have those conversations, to be able to help people in need that you don't even know, or who will come to you when they're like, hey, I mean, I've had those moments where one of my mentees recommended me to be a part of an advisory council to which I got an invitation to serve. I had no idea. It was not something I had pursued. I didn't even know it existed. And here they were coming to me. They're like, well, this person um, said we absolutely had to reach out to you. So that's why we're doing it. That's what a strong professional relationship looks like. Okay. When those unexpected things come to you, support you, provide you with opportunities that you hadn't even thought about, and knowing that there are some key folks that you can look to in times of transition, challenges, turmoil, or whatever to say, hey, I need your input on a couple of things. Sorry. I don't know why I always end up videoing before lunchtime. I'm gonna need to take a snack before I get on the camera. So that's the thing. So I just love this. And so I have this question I wrote down that is for anyone who's listening to this today or in the days to come. How deep does your network really go? Like that's your reflection question to go sit down, have a cup of coffee, cup of tea, glass of wine, whatever, and think about like how deep does my network really go? Because even I, after watching this, had to think about it. I'm like, where do I need to do some refreshing? Are there spaces where I need to do some refreshing with some people? Because I consider myself to have a pretty strong and a pretty deep network. But man, like this just took it all to a whole other level. And here's the real question. Who is on your quote, in case of a professional emergency, quote, call list? That is the real thing. Who is on your in case of a professional emergency call list? Because that's the people who showed up for Don Lemon this past week. And like, I asked that question of you, and I'm asking that question of myself, and I'm absolutely going to be doing that as my own personal uh, um, exercise because it's really important to know who can you call in those times. We have that personally, right? Sometimes we know, sometimes we don't. But a lot of times we know who we can reach out to on a personal matter to support us. But professionally, do we have that? And so I'm going to encourage you to take a look at that and to think about that. And if you don't know or you don't have answers to those questions right now, it's okay. Don't panic about it because there's work that you can do to be able to have those answers to those questions. There's the reflection that I've just talked about, to being able to sit down, have some conversations with folks, maybe with an accountability partner or a close colleague. Call me, DM me. Let's figure out, how we can work together to make that happen, because that's the work that I do and that I am so proud to be doing, because this like made my heart happy. I was like, oh my gosh, everything that I've been doing for, I don't know what, last 15, 20 years makes sense. It makes sense. And this story proves it. All right. That's what I got for you today. I look forward to following up with you again tomorrow. And as we push forward to finishing this first week, I'm so excited. I look forward to you know, talking some more. And if you have some questions, conversations, things that you want to talk about as a professional, as a person, because we're going to be doing all of those things, right? This is the laying the groundwork for the new conversations that we're going to be having, and that I want to call celebrate you conversations, where they expand on you as a full person, not just in work, but from your health and your creativity and being empowered in the situations that you're faced with, like all across the board, all the things. And that's what this, dare I say, new community is going to be about. So I look forward to engaging, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. All right, bye.